Paradie. And am I supposed to look at you or him? Because I never know.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, look at me. You guys don't mind. Okay, so how do you feel like the first day went today?
I feel like it was extremely productive and shed a lot of light on the condition that Mr. Williams was in when he was taken into custody and interrogated. I thought our physician and our psychologist provided a very good detailed description about the factors that would influence Mr. Williams to be as cooperative and accommodating as can be to get his needs met. And I think the prosecution has seemed to focus on our believing that we're saying he wasn't competent or wasn't able to understand Miranda, and we're really focusing on voluntariness and the fact that he believed if he talked to the officers and told them what they wanted him to say, he'd be fed, he'd get clothing, he'd be allowed to sleep, and he would suffer no more beatings. And I think you're going to hear tomorrow or eventually from Mr. Williams the things that were said to him. There will be an officer tomorrow who will say that he was taunted on the way out of the woods. There may be a dispute as to what was said to him, but he was definitely taunted, and Mr. Williams firmly believed that these detectives, as long as he kept talking, were going to protect him from sending him back to those folks, because he believed that that was what was going to happen if he didn't talk. So that was a long-winded answer, but...
Okay, so you mentioned, are we going to hear from John Williams?
It is very likely, yes.
Tomorrow?
Nope. So the hearing, we're not going to reach, we have a 3.5-hour interview video to play tomorrow afternoon. So we don't have enough time that we thought we were going to have in the 2 days. And so the judge has scheduled April 8th and potentially the 9th. And that would be the time that we're going to hear from Mr. Williams, if in fact we do, which I am 99% sure we probably will.
Okay.
Depending on what some of these other officers and witnesses admit to.
So when you say that he was taunted, what was said to him?
Well, I mean, there were admissions that he from officers that said he was basically a piece of S word. That Mr. Williams would say that he believed that he was being threatened of future harm, including at the prison. That they hoped that he would go away forever, and I mean, there was just a lot of. There's limited. We still don't know. Nobody has told us, or may not have heard, what Trooper Burke said to him, whispering in his ear. You'll hear tomorrow an officer will say that he gave him a message or delivered him a message. What that message was, we won't know, because I'm not even sure Trooper Burke is going to admit that he said anything.
Is he going to be questioned?
He will be here tomorrow, yes. So.
What was it from the officers we heard from today? What was the takeaway from you? Where are the holes?
Well, I think that there's a ton of discrepancies in what they said, and I think that they'll. Sorry, you're gonna drag. I can get you after 2.
You're good.
So I think there's a ton of discrepancies in what they said. I think there's a lot of minimization of what they said. The trooper who struck Mr. Williams, who says that it shouldn't have broken the skin, and it was kind of lightly. I mean, you all saw the pictures today. That certainly didn't bear out to be true. And he also said his arm was down to the right side and he was worried about it. And then you heard the warden say that he had his hand on it, his foot on it the whole time securing it. So I think there's a lot of discrepancies, and everyone agrees there was a lot of adrenaline going on. And I think that it just I think we got a lot of admissions out of folks today. The inconsistencies in themselves. I mean, the believability of a warden, of the warden standing right next to this happening and not either hearing anyone strike someone or seeing it. I don't find that extremely credible.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Can I get you separate? Because I got out here.
You're late? Yeah, well, so did he. So I said, yeah, you guys can. That's fine.
We thought you guys had left.
No, we were going to.
I don't mind staying around.
What did we miss?
I think she asked me how I thought the first day went or something along those lines.
Raj was thinking.
What? Let me wait for her.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, I'm kind of doing everything by myself here. Give
Here,
me
let
2
me hold the
seconds.
mic for you.
All right, I got it. I'm good. I'm ready
Hold
to
that
go.
for you.
You hold it?
Thanks.
Yeah, I got him. And you can look. What's better, right down the middle here?
Yeah,
Yep,
kind
that's
of right there.
perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
That's so weird when I don't get to look
You don't get to look at anybody. Would you rather him look at me?
No, it's fine.
No, it doesn't matter to me. Either one's
Okay.
fine.
I'll look at him.
All right. How do you think today went?
I thought today went exceptionally well. I think our physicians and our physician and psychologist really offered some explanation as to what we've been trying to say all along. And there were a ton of psychological conditions and environmental conditions that affected Mr. Williams' ability to to form rational decision making around speaking with police. I mean, he believed he would get food, he believed he would get sleep, he believed he would not be subject to further beatings by the police. He believed that, and not to mention his opiate withdrawal. And so while he may have appeared to be coherent, and we've never argued that he was incompetent in the sense that he couldn't understand or was acting in a bizarre manner, where it's never been our position. But I think that this has now, I think the doctors did a good job explaining what we're trying to show, and that Mr. Williams was in a extremely difficult situation, emotionally and physically, and was saying anything that the officers wanted him to say, and talking just because he wanted to. Now, I think I told someone else this earlier, I mean, and as the doctor said, it was the best line of the day. I mean, if they would have waited for a few days, and if they would have let him dry out, so to speak, gave him some food, let him sleep, as the prosecutor said, maybe he just wanted to confess because he wanted to get it off his chest. Well, we would know that. If that's the case, he would have done it 4 days from then.
What did you think about the state trooper's testimony about him being the person to arrest John Williams?
I'm not sure I understood that question.
What did you think about what he had to say? Was that consistent with what John told you?
Oh, the Trooper Lang, the trooper who struck John. John maintains that he was kicked at some point, and it was not just fists. So I have obviously no trooper or other officer has admitted that, nor do I expect that they will. But so it is not consistent with what Mr. Williams has told us about the extent of what went on that day.
So who's expected tomorrow to take the stand?
So tomorrow, the morning will be Trooper Burke, and it'd be interesting to see what he has to say, because I haven't even been able to see that he acknowledged that he said anything to Mr. Williams, and so I don't know what he's going to say. It will also be a Fairfield police officer who will say that he saw Trooper Burke deliver a message to Mr. Williams when he whispered in his ear. He doesn't say what that was. And he will also admit that there was a lot of taunting going on amongst all the officers transporting Mr. Williams out of the woods. And then the afternoon will be 3 hours of the interrogation video.
Just for curiosity's sake, taunting and stuff like that, what effect would that have?
Well, threats of violence certainly would impact Mr. Williams. And there's no dispute that detectives were extremely nice to him, which is, he was glad. So he thought they were going to, basically, that they were there to protect him, and if he was talkative, they would prevent him, the other officers, from carrying out on the threats that they were making. So
It seems that there are, as you mentioned, some inconsistencies. Do you think that those inconsistencies will present any issue with you getting that confession thrown out?
I mean, from my perspective, my argument would be that the inconsistencies go towards the credibility. People are, I think that the officers, nobody wants to get in trouble, and so that's going to be my argument. Whether the judge portrays that or not, or buys that or not, I'm not, I can't say, but Mr. Williams will most likely have a different story, and then the judge will have to decide who he believes.
Mr. Williams still not expected to testify tomorrow?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have anything out, guys?
I think I'm good.
Good? Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
actually,
Appreciate
I
your
do
time.
need one more thing. I just